if you are leaving on a jet plane and you're taking your flutes with you, this video is for you. This Flutecast is about the ins and outs of how I've dealt over the last decade and a half, taken my flutes on airplanes all around the world, and I've done it safely. Some people have not done it safely. There is a great video on YouTube called United Breaks Guitars. It's an entire story of how this poor guy's guitar, he watched his guitar getting broken by United and the year of trying to get compensation for it, and it created an entire industry. The band became consultants in customer service. That video, United Breaks Guitars, BBC reported that it cost United $180 million in stock price as a result of the bad publicity they got from the United Breaks Guitars video. So it's a real thing. And changes have been made since then, and we'll talk about those changes. We'll look at how you can travel safely all around the world. People have traveled with their flutes to outer space. John Harrington, the first Native American astronaut, took a flute on the space shuttle. So it can be done. First question is, which flutes do you take? This is an important consideration. Taking your very high-priced, very expensive, one-of-a-kind, or historic flutes, not a good idea for a number of reasons. Look for flutes that you can take that are, of course, all flutes are one of a kind, but are somewhat replaceable, like a high spirits flute or a Butch Hall flute, where those makers have made many of the same series, the same key. They make them very similarly, so you can replace a flute with a very similar flute. That really helps to ease your mind, because the key question you're going to have to ask yourself is, what if I'm in a situation where they say you cannot board the flight unless you check your flutes? It's important to make the decision ahead of time. Am I going to board the flight? Don't put yourself in a situation where you're having to make that decision standing in front of people. Make this decision ahead of time on a flight-by-flight basis, whether you're going to board the flight or not board the flight. And taking flutes that are not so expensive, that are somewhat replaceable, that are not historic, helps you make that decision. You might say, I'm going to fly with a Butch Hall flute and a high spirits flute, and I'll check them if I have to. And that would be fine. Okay, so you've made that decision, and the next thing to do is to consider, what am I going to do for protection? How am I going to protect these instruments? And we get into flute cases. I have a lot of flute cases here, and I'll just kind of go through them. This is my go-to flute case. These flute cases are mostly from Oregon Flute Store. They're a provider. They have the Laughing Mallard brand. There's also flutecase.com. I do have some flutes from cases from flutecase.com. And this is kind of the standard case. It's got a standard PVC inside. PVC tubes are very common. Okay, and it also has a nice side pocket which has this letter in it, and we'll talk about this letter. And I put into each one of my flute cases that letter. That's a very important letter because it outlines the specifics of the air regulations that apply to carrying musical instruments in the cabin and not checking them. We'll go through these. So let's see what we got here. We have this guy, which is larger and a bit shorter, and it is lighter because it has aluminum. I believe this is called the migrator, and it's got a larger bore, but this is significantly lighter and I believe stronger than the PVC, and it can be X-rayed. It is amenable to being X-rayed. If you've got lots and lots of flutes, here we go. This is the honker. It's got 3 tubes, a little bit hard to see. It is PVC, I believe. Yes, it is PVC, but it has a lining. And lining is a valuable thing to consider. Of course, you're going to put your flutes into flute socks right inside, but there's an additional level of protection if you have lining inside the cases. And this is a favorite of Scott August. Scott August flies with or drives with and uses that. And he does not take his flutes out in performance. He'll just take the case, put it down, and pull out the flute, play it, put it back, pull out the flute, play it. I've seen him do that. And that's kind of an advantage. What else do we have here? For longer flutes, I have this. Now, outside material can be nylon. It can also be like this Pendleton wool, right? Some of the makers use this nice pattern of Pendleton wool. And for the really long flute, we've got this is kind of a custom job. Okay, it carries a single flute. Yes, this is there it is. And it's nicely padded on the inside with a soft fleece padding. What else do we have here? Kind of going from large to small, but I do want to point out we also have the Pelican case. Pelican is a company that makes like camera cases, and these cases are actually waterproof. I'm not going to open this, but it's got a bunch of flutes inside. I use this for storage. I have used it to carry flutes. What we usually use are larger versions of these Pelican cases to ship by UPS to workshops. We go with 2 larger. One is a long case and one is like this, but larger. 2 70-pound cases get shipped all over the place from workshop to workshop. We get them home once a year and repack them and then send them on their way around to the workshops that we do, and they go from one workshop to the next workshop, and it's made workshops possible because we get there, we open the case, take out, set up the sound system, set up the instruments we need, set up the displays, have all our materials for our participants, close it all up, and on to the next workshop. And that works, sending things by UPS, but we do not send flutes that way. We do send plastic flutes, loner flutes, the A minor flutes that we use, but we wouldn't send any serious flutes like that. Okay, what else do we have here? Moving on to the smaller cases, this is actually a single flute case for a very historic instrument that I have, very important to me, and I don't take this with me. I use it at home, but if you have a single flute, you can take a case like that. And I've actually made my own version of that. Oops, careful, don't drop the cases on the floor. I've made my own case like that, and it's PVC. Now, what kind of PVC would you use to make your own homegrown case? This is thin wall PVC. You don't want Schedule 40, you don't want Schedule 80. It's very heavy and unnecessarily heavy. You don't need that kind of strength or weight. You want thin wall PVC. This is 3-inch wide class 100, which is SDR 41. And that's about the thinnest you can get. The smallest I make it, I believe, is in 3-inch nominal size. The actual outside diameter is 3.5 inches. And this is good enough to take in your knapsack. It's very hard to crush. Okay, and I actually have end caps. These end caps are made of plastic. They're 3D printed, and they fit exactly on the end. The bottom is the same as the top in terms of the end cap, and it's taped, okay, on the bottom, and it's got a Velcro closure on the top. And this has worked very well, and it's, by the way, also, I've added neoprene padding, self-stick neoprene padding on the top and bottom on the inside, because getting hit from the top and the bottom is a concern, and also around the inside at the bottom to keep the bell of that particular flute. It's for a particular flute. So there we are. Traveling through the airport. This is where your preparation comes into play. You're going to be checking in. If they ask you to check your flute case, say, this is a musical instrument. We'll get a little bit later why that's important. Musical instruments have special status as carry-on items. You're going to take it through security. You're going to take it through security with TSA people who have possibly the most difficult job. They meet people who are nervous and scared all day long, every day. And they have to put up with that as their normal job. And there's often a crush of people. So I am extra nice to these people. I thank them for doing the job that they're doing because it allows us to fly. And if it becomes an issue, I say, oh yes, these are musical instruments. These are my flutes. I love my flutes, and I'd be happy to play them for you. And I have actually taken them out and played, and I play until they say, no, that's okay, fine, you can go on now. So be prepared to take it out and with a smile on your face, just play it for them. But be aware that when you send it through the X-ray machine, if it comes out and gets taken off to the side and needs to be examined, you can't touch it anymore. Don't expect to unwrap it for them. They will be opening it for them. The thing to say, I've learned, is when they take it aside, say these words, this requires special care and handling. Special care and handling is the key word to them to say they need to be extra careful about opening this. They will open it, they will take it out, and explaining what it is really does help. Saying this is a Native American flute, they're made of wood. One of the issues is that they are, some of them, I believe, have been trained to look through the instrument to see that they can see all the way through and that there's nothing inside. And they're used to being able to do this with lots of instruments like clarinets and oboes, and you can't do that with a Native American flute. So saying, and by the way, there's a centerpiece in the middle because this is a two-chambered instrument. These are historic instruments. It's a two-chambered instrument, and there is a center plug in the center, so you won't be able to see all the way through it. That can help. Okay, so we move some of the security check to the boarding gate, and this is where the regulations, the FAA regulations, come into play. Okay. We will post a link to downloading that. Single page, fold it up, put it in each one of your flute cases. Basically what it says is, if there is room in the cabin, in any class, in the overhead compartment, for your instrument, you are allowed to take it on. If there's room in first class and you're sitting back in the cheap seats, that's okay. They have to put it into an overhead compartment if it fits at the time you board. And that's kind of an interesting issue because it means it is better to be at the front of the line than the back of the line. Because if you're the last one on the plane and all the overheads are full, you're out of luck. However, if you're first, and you can find a spot, and sometimes I'll find the first spot. If it looks kind of crowded in the back, I'll take one of the earlier spots, which might be in first class. And if they say, I'll just say it's a musical instrument, and there has never been a discussion about that. Since this regulation came out, I believe it was 2012. Yes, FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012. I'm thinking that happened after United Breaks Guitars, possibly. There's one other thing I'd like to bring up, the possibility of a custom case. It's actually too large for the camera. It's a case that I got from Calzone in Bridgeport, Connecticut. They make custom music cases, and this case holds my Fuyara. It was designed specifically for the Fuyara, and a few other instruments. Now that's 5.5 feet long, 5.5 foot long flute. That's everything I can think of on flying with flutes. Have fun and learn how to play John Denver's song, Leaving on a Jet Plane.